Hi, and great to be here. It is wonderful to cruise on through January with this hot air, relatively speaking, but we're going to back off of that a little bit going into next week, and there'll be some brief, at least cold stretches. You're going to continue to have the warmth across the middle portion of the country, but there'll be some Arctic blasts, Midwest, Great Lakes, and into the east at times, becoming a lot more common as we go through the middle and then eventually into the end of the month. System here pulling on out for your early Thursday. A lot of snow into portions of the Rockies, high pressure, low pressure, lots of moisture flowing on in with this warm air across portions of Nebraska, through Wisconsin, Illinois, into Michigan. There's going to be even the chance for some thunderstorms at times for the next few days into areas, the Ohio Valley, Midwest, Tennessee Valley area. This one low moves off towards the northeast, and we quickly get organization of another one on the backside here further to the south. That's again going to pull in that Gulf Coast moisture. Watch for severe weather chances across the deep south. Plenty of warm air through your Friday, surging northward, and there's going to be pretty warm air across the East Coast even into your Saturday as well. Look at all this moisture. That's going to be some very heavy rain with those storms into the Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley area. This low will move off towards the north and east. On the backside will be very cold air, relatively speaking. We should see a decent snow event with some pretty good wind somewhere from the Twin Cities into Michigan by the time we get into Saturday afternoon or evening. And then going through the rest of the day, that system pushes off towards the north and east. North of Montreal, north of Ottawa will probably be the heavier snow, and then you'll see that backside snow kind of linger with this trough late into the day on Saturday. The main system pulls off. That's going to be just showers for much of the East Coast, and we'll have to watch if there's going to be a little back end enhancement or lake effect to at least allow for a little snowfall accumulation by the time we get towards the end of your weekend. And then maybe we'll get into a clipper system here and there. It'll be up and down temperatures at times for next week with some surges of just very minor amounts of precipitation, most likely, as you'll have this one system surge on through. There'll be a little bit of snowfall back behind it, but notice middle portion of the country, plains into the southeast, at that point going to be pretty dry. There's not going to be a ton going on next week, at least with heavier precipitation. So over the course of the next week into the middle portions, it's not a ton of snow. Where we do see that main banding set up, several inches is possible, but most of us not a ton. You're going to get the couple events out across the west. That will be some decent accumulation in spots, including into the Denver area and the mountains, but not much into the Sierra Nevada. And then as we push across the Great Lakes, there's your best spot right now, probably of the 5 to 10 inches, somewhere around Lake Michigan into northern Michigan areas, and then up into Ontario and Quebec. And not a ton across portions of Pennsylvania or New York State, and really much of anywhere near coastal New England. As we go forward past the next 10 days, well, maybe this could be kind of the area that fills on in. We'll have to keep an eye on that if there's going to be a system to potentially impact areas closer to the East Coast. We'll see. It doesn't look like anything crazy. Drought conditions are pretty widespread across a big deal of the country, with some even well into the severe and extreme droughts. So we definitely could use some rain. We'll see this first batch and then a secondary batch that's going to be moving on through that we showed you over the next week or so, especially through, I should say, the weekend. And then, yeah, a lot of us, half an inch, and then where we had that heavier banding, a few inches, and that's the main spot where there could be flooding, a minor flooding possible in areas where there's ice and snow melt further north. We're going to set up a much drier trend through next week for a pretty good portion of the country, including out west and across a pretty big bubble when you go further east as well. What about those temperature trends? Well, we showed you the anomalies are definitely going to start to get colder, but not necessarily cold. I mean, it's going to be pretty warm for those first few days into this period, and then there's a brief blast of pretty cold air in through the weekend, but that gets removed. It's kind of up and down next week. By the second half of the week, it looks like another blast of some briefly Arctic air comes down. It'll certainly be colder, but it doesn't mean that anything super widespread, well below average will happen. As we look at the pattern evolution over the next week plus, one of the parameters that we look at is the EPO, Eastern Pacific Oscillation. And when it's in its high positive phase, it's normally a little bit warmer. It does look like it's going to be dropping decently through mid-January. That should set up the second half of January for the eastern half or so of the country to at least be colder. I disagree a little bit on the Climate Prediction Center's temperature trend map for much of next week through the weekend. I think this is overdone on the warm side of things from the eastern third of the country. I think this is going to be cooler. Not necessarily well below average or anything like that. I do agree west and in towards the plains, especially the western plains, will be pretty warm. So things to keep in mind. Thanks so much for watching and take care.